Hi, I'm Lynn Eisaguirre. Welcome to Sea Fans.
And I'm John Evans. I'm filling in for Jimmy Ibbotson, who's off picking and singing with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band.
Well, Jimmy's working on a new album and getting ready for a summer concert tour. We're preparing for a summer diving season with a warm-up set in the pool.
It's a good idea for anyone who's been away from the water for a while, before heading off on that first dive trip, open water dive of the season, to arrange for a pool session through your local dive store. That way you have an opportunity to check your equipment, make sure everything's in working order, and to brush up on your dive skills.
And we have some great locations in this issue for you to use those diving skills, including a news story on the Red Sea and Nassau in the Bahamas. But first, we've had a lot of questions from viewers recently about diving conditions in Cozumel.
Last fall, Hurricane Gilbert roared over that diver's island. Now Lynn has an up-to-the-minute story on what it's like diving in Cozumel after the hurricane's visit.
You know, John, I did my first open water dive in Cozumel over 10 years ago.
Really? How was it?
Well, I sat on a sea urchin, so it wasn't a great experience. I'm a fast learner, though, and hundreds of dives since then. I've never done that again. Like most longtime divers, we're always happy to go back to Cozumel, and we know that it's a favorite for many sea fans. So Jimmy and I wanted to go down there and let you know what current conditions are. We're happy to report that Cozumel is back, and it's better than ever.
September 1988. Hurricane Gilbert rips through Cozumel, whipping the sea into a frenzy, demolishing palm trees and beaches. Sea Fans crew member Doug Steebner was there on vacation when the storm hit.
Well, it was a real interesting experience. It's something I'm glad I got to go through. It's something I hope I never have to go through again. We lost power about 11 o'clock at night, and it was just pitch dark out. It was like you were in a room where no light could enter. I mean, you would open up the door to the hotel room and you couldn't see anything if you held your hand in front of your face. We didn't know what was going on the whole night. The wind just howled. We spent most of the night in the bathroom because it was surrounded on 3 walls by concrete brick. The sun came up about 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was just so fascinating. And I watched the Sol Caribe have pieces ripped off of it and a lot of damage done to the trees. And I was kind of afraid to stand too long in front of the sliding glass door windows since they were moving in and out like 1.5 to 2 inches. Then the eye hit about 11 o'clock, and it was absolutely calm. Kind of went out, and we knew we were in the eye, so we didn't wander too far. And then the wind started to pick up from the other way, and we watched the entire second half of the hurricane from our balcony. The next day, I started to take some pictures of the carnage that had gone on, some of the broken up signs and buildings and trees and stuff like that. But my batteries went dead, and since there was no electricity on the island, I wasn't able to shoot anymore.
We'd heard conflicting reports about current conditions of the island and the reefs, so Jimmy and I decided to accept the invitation of the Cozumel Resort Association and Continental Airlines to see for ourselves. Here's our report. The scene at La Ceiba may have been horrendous during the storm, but now the beach and the bar provide a calm retreat. Curious about the reefs, we waste no time getting underwater. On the reefs, there's been some damage. We find broken sponges and torn soft corals. Yet Cozumel's famous drop-offs, color, drama, and marine life remain. The reefs are still alive with motion. The The dive routines haven't changed much either in Cozumel. Most sites are still drift dives where visitors swim lazily over the coral. Cozumel operators take divers out for the whole day with a deeper dive in the morning, lunch on the beach, and then a shallow afternoon dive. The storm deposited lots of trash, trees, and other debris on the reefs. But everyone pulled together to clean up after Gilbert. Tom Hartigan of Dive Paradise was one of the leaders of Cozumel's unique cleanup effort.
Somebody comes along, dumps a ton of trash in your front yard, and runs off on you. What do? Hurricane Gilbert left a big mess on our reefs. It had to be cleaned up. There were tree trunks, big tree trunks, branches, concrete with re-rods sticking out of it, pieces of boat, tires, a lot of trash. The volunteers gave, it was incredible. Everyone wanted to help. We had native dive masters, we had Navy divers, Americans living on the island, tourists would come in to buy a trip and say, hey, would you rather come and help us clean up? No charge. They'd go right away. It was a good effort. Those that participated, and those, especially those that stuck it through, we take a lot of satisfaction out of it. We calculate that in the 14 days of cleanup, we removed over 17 tons of trash off the reefs. They look good again.
Marine biologists who've been underwater since Gilbert predict a complete recovery and rejuvenation for the reefs. In fact, there are some things about Cozumel which have improved since Gilbert. The hurricane carved out a new tunnel system at Punta Sur, enhancing what was already one of Cozumel's most dramatic dives. Another blessing brought by the hurricane is the arrival of more unusual and larger marine life. Dive guides have noticed that the storm stirred up new life from deeper water. Oscar Torres, a dive guide at Dive Paradise, regularly encounters eagle rays now in the open areas around Punta Sur. But rumors that Cozumel was devastated by the storm persist, prompting the dive operators to start the new EDP, or Experienced Diver Program, in an effort to lure return visitors. Dive Paradise, like some of the other operators, has started to take small groups of experienced divers on fast boats to spots most visitors didn't get to see before. The drop-off at Virgin Wall is one EDP spot. Punta Sur is another. Tom Hartigan's theory is that broken sponges and soft coral will recover if they're reattached to an appropriate habitat. So he does some repair work on every dive. We're not sure if this will be successful, but we're willing to do our part. On the island's surface, there's still some ongoing repair. Gilbert gave many resorts the opportunity to rebuild their facilities so they're ship-shape and better than ever. All the major hotels like Casa del Mar are now operational, and visitors can still find great places to have cocktails and watch the sunset. Cozumel's unique ambiance remains intact, with street-side cafes on the harbor and shopping bargains. Divers still party all night at places like Karen's Pizza with its Colombian band.
Yeah.
Another popular party spot is a weekly fiesta at El Presidente. And of course, no trip to Cozumel would be complete without a visit to Carlos and Charlie's. Although the famous Cozumel watering spot was flattened by the hurricane, it's been completely rebuilt. Somehow, after full nights of partying, most visitors still manage to dive all day. Divers can expect typical Cozumel weather. Average temperatures are around 80 degrees, rising to the low 90s in July and August and the mid-70s in the winter months. The water temperature remains around 80 degrees, and most divers appear comfortable in skin suits. If you've dismissed Cozumel from your dive travel plan since the storm, now's the time to see for yourself that this diver's island remains one of the best in the Caribbean. Take advantage of the current bargain fares and see Cozumel again without the crowds before the rest of the world realizes what they've been missing.
Thanks, Lynn. I'm sure divers everywhere are glad to know that Cozumel's still a prime diving locale.
Speaking of prime diving locales, many viewers have raved about our coverage of the Red Sea in the last issue.
And now the Egypt adventure continues. We pick up with our crew where we left them off, in Sharm el-Sheikh.
Wassalan, sea fans. In Arabic, that means hello and welcome.
Welcome back to the second part of our Red Sea adventure. This time we're going shore diving, the European way of exploring the underwater wonders of the Sinai.
Jackson Reef in the Straits of Tiran is treacherous to ships, but delightful for divers.
We'll explore an old English wreck, the historic Dunraven, aboard an English liveaboard, the Lady Jenny 5.
Then it's off to Cairo to tour the archaeological wonders of Egypt's ancient civilization. Our headquarters is the Marina Sharm Hotel in Sharm el-Sheikh. It's comfortable and air-conditioned.
The hotel overlooks the beach at Nama Bay, the sun and fun capital of the Sinai.
With some 40 miles of continuous virgin reef dropping away from the shore, the Sharm el-Sheikh area has a well-deserved reputation for some of the best diving in the Red Sea. Europeans started coming here to dive in the 70s during the Israeli occupation. It wasn't long before word got around of the fantastic diving. And from most of Europe, the Sinai Peninsula is only a 4 to 5 hour plane ride away, making this the European Caribbean.
Sites like Jackson Reef, Amphoras, Ras Mohammed, and the Straits of Tiran were now open to Swedes, Germans, Brits, and the French. Belgian-born Alan Sobel first came here to dive in 1972, liked it, and came back to open the Aquamarine Dive Center.
I was running a dive shop in Belgium, and in fact I'm diving since I'm 8 years old. I'm now nearly 40, so and I used to stay in the rain of Belgium, and I was running this dive shop. So one day I was really tired to be there behind the counter and to see all these people moving for the sun, and I moved myself, and that's why I'm living here for the time being.
A group is getting a certification chalk talk under Aquamarine's patio as Alan takes us to get tanks and weights for an afternoon shore dive.
How many times have you had to cross a desert on your way diving? It's a new experience for us. Although it makes us feel like Lawrence of Arabia, we can't wait to escape the scorching desert heat and dive into the inviting blue waters of the Red Sea.
Many of the best dive sites are accessible from shore, but getting geared up is definitely more difficult than just slipping off the back of a boat.
The main reason why Sinai has been very, very popular and a lot of Europeans used to come is because it's possible to make shore dive, and it's possible to dive very, very good diving spot just on a shore dive. That's make also the dive cheap. That means you don't have to be on a liveaboard with high running costs. You just need a vehicle, a good car, and a four-wheel drive. Even it's not always necessary. You need a trailer, and then you can come on a spot like this post, which is called Amphoras, and you have a very short reef, and then just after the reef you have a drop-off, and it's going deep here till 200 feet, just very close to the reef.
Glassfish, or russet fish as they're sometimes known, hunt tunnels and caverns during the day, emerging into open water to feed only during the shelter of nightfall. Too many to count, these tiny fish swirl about as poetry in motion. We spot a young Napoleon wrasse.
How do you know his age? Ask for his driver's license?
No, just check the size of its hump. And by the way, how do you know it's a he? These fish do have the ability to change sexes.
It's getting late in the afternoon, and the setting sun casts a glorious reddish hue over the sky and water. In Arabic, Gamila Shems means beautiful sun. Is this how the Red Sea got its name? Actually, no one knows. But of course, there are many theories. What we can tell you is that the Red Sea is definitely not red, but a glorious deep blue.
It's hard to imagine that this peaceful land could be the scene of strife. But just 20 years ago, in June 1967, Israeli paratroopers dropped into Sharm el-Sheikh and took control of this strategic stronghold. Israeli businessmen and settlers saw the Sinai's tourist potential and built the first resort hotels. But in 1982, as a result of the Camp David Accords, which finally brought the hope of a lasting peace between Egypt and Israel, the Sinai was returned to Egypt. There's still a UN-sponsored peacekeeping force here, including a U.S. Army contingent.
Today, we're off to dive world-famous Jackson Reef in the Straits of Tiran. Our vessel is Aquamarine's comfortable day boat, Abu Hara. Perched right in the center of the shipping lanes, Jackson Reef and its neighbor, Gordon Reef, are formidable menaces to navigation.
The reef juts all the way to the surface from its roots 200 feet below. Heavy currents wash across the corals, feeding them a nutrient-rich broth. Although pioneer divers to the area, like Carl Rossler, say the reef has deteriorated dramatically since he first dove here 20 years ago, it still looks spectacular to us. Hard and soft corals of every description cover the wall. Like many other Red Sea sites, there's no need to dive deep here. Some of the best underwater scenery's in 10 to 15 feet of water. Of course, that means you have to cope with some surface surge, but it's worth it. Of more concern is the heavy current sweeping down the straits. Our dive guide has warned us to stay in the lee of the reef or be swept out to sea.
Several live-aboard dive boats are based in Sharm el-Sheikh, including the Lady Jenny 5. It's a 96-foot-long motor vessel featuring air-conditioned accommodations for 16 guests in 7 cabins. Captain Alex Double and his wife Tamara, the boat's dive master, have invited the Sea Fans crew aboard to explore some of their favorite sights. We asked the Doubles to compare Red Sea diving with the Caribbean.
I think the difference in the coral life and the a lot more fish, I think, a lot bigger fish. I think that was the thing. Not necessarily large oceanic type fish, but certainly a greater variety of coral fish around.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a tropical island turned upside down, really. Everything's underwater, nothing on land. In a way, it's quite restful. You come out of a dive where you've seen, you know, tons of stuff, and then your eyes are sort of rested by the same old scene day in, day out for years. It has its beauty. I mean, the desert here is very beautiful, and it has some marvellous sunsets. The sunsets usually behind the mountains. There seem to be mountains everywhere. And if there's any kind of cloud or mist in the air, then it just spreads this red across the sky, and it does something to your soul. It's very nice, you know.
The Lady Jenny 5's first stop is Ras Mohammed, one of the most famous dive sites in the world. It lies right at the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula, where the Gulf of Suez meets the Gulf of Aqaba. Conflicting currents are apparent even on the surface as we approach the site. That means anchoring is dangerous, so Alex elects to drop us by Zodiac, while he keeps the Lady Jenny a safe distance away.
Here's a ground plan of the whole of the Ras Mohammed area, which is quite a big area, and it's not something you'd cover in one dive. So I propose we start our dive on Shark Reef, on the wall. Okay, now this is a spectacular wall going down to about 700 meters, straight down, and in fact at deeper water it actually starts to undercut. As we come across around this corner here, we'll go across a sort of saddle, if you like, which is shallow. We'll be at about 50 feet. And this is the big area for fish feeding.
We decide to concentrate on the area of Ras Mohammed known as Anemone City. The lush anemones here harbor incredible numbers of my favorite fish, clownfish.
What is it that attracts us to the clownfish? Maybe it's their funny little pouting mouths, or perhaps it's the way they snuggle up against the flowing tentacles of their host. A special relationship exists between clownfish and anemones. In fact, it's difficult to picture one without the other.
Now wait a minute, these small blackfish aren't clownfish.
You're right, they're called three-spotted coralfish. Just like the clownfish, they too are protected from the anemone's stingers. Each small fish has 3 white spots which disappear later in adulthood. Now, to understand the special living arrangement of these 3, let's begin with the anemone. An anemone usually eats fish. Its tentacles are covered with venomous stinging cells called nematocysts. When a small fish accidentally brushes up against one of these, it stings the fish, and its tentacles stick even tighter, and soon the fish is unable to escape. But the clever clownfish and the 3-spotted coralfish have a mucus covering on their bodies, which inhibits the anemone's stingers. The anemone has no powers over these 2.
Lady Jenny offers as much diving as you can handle each day, and that means one of the special treats of diving off a liveaboard, an after-dinner night dive.
Nighttime on the reef is a special time when strange creatures like the crinoid come out to feed. Here's a poisonous pincushion urchin, also known as a fire biscuit.
Alex has moved the boat overnight, and when we wake, we find we're anchored near the wreck of the mysterious Dunraven. When it was first discovered a decade ago, experts secretly hoped and believed the Dunraven was a treasure ship sunk in the early 1900s while carrying gold coins. Lawrence of Arabia had planned to use the wealth to bribe Arab sheiks, but initial dives on the wreck revealed no sign of gold. Further research only served to confuse matters. Lloyd's of London found 2 Dunravens existed during this period, but neither ship had sunk in the Red Sea. How could this be? The nameplate on the ship distinctly says Dunraven. Perhaps the vessel wasn't English after all, or maybe the Israeli research team had incorrectly guessed the age of the ship. Finally, a breakthrough. Divers found china on board bearing the initials GFB. The team successfully traced the china back to England, where it was found to have been made by a Mr. George Frederick Bowers during the 1870s, a full 40 years earlier than the records the team had researched. Back to Lloyd's, where it was revealed that there was a 3rd Dunraven that had sunk in 1879. Unfortunately, its cargo wasn't treasures of gold, but bales of cotton, and that had been salvaged when the ship went down. And so today, the mystery ship lies upside down in 75 to 100 feet of water, guarded by lionfish who lurk in the beams. Keep a respectful distance when observing these impressive but poisonous creatures. Their dorsal fins contain spines that automatically eject a painful poison when touched.
Although we wish we could stay here longer, it's time to head for Cairo if we want to check out the pyramids at Giza and take a camel ride before heading home. Rather than endure another 8-hour drive across the desert, this time we elect to fly aboard Egyptair's 737. To experience Cairo, one need only step out into the streets, into a moving, funneling hive of man, beast, and traffic. A thick haze envelops the city. The heady aroma of ripening fruit, oriental spices, desert dust, and sweet Indian tobacco fills the air. This is a giant metropolis. Over 15 million people live and work here in the shadow of the pyramids. Cairo, mother of the world, is the largest city in all of Africa, the Middle East, and the Arab world. Its population alone makes it the largest city within its third of the globe.
Cairo is an exotic city. It overwhelms the senses. But what we want to see now are the magnificent pyramids. What better way to do so than seated at the helm of a ship of the desert? Ladies first.
My camel's name is Michael Jackson.
Yours is Michael Jackson?
Yeah, he says his camel's name is Michael Jackson. I understand the view is very good from over there. You can see all 3 pyramids.
The Liveaboard Experience, the hottest thing in dive travel. The Liveaboard Experience means diving mobility and diving comfort. The Liveaboard Experience means diving convenience and diving companionship. The Liveaboard Experience means diving variety, the world's best dive sites with your own floating dive resort. The Liveaboard Experience means getting the most out of your diving dollars and your diving time. To get the best liveaboard experience, go with the company that has the most experience with liveaboards. C&C Travel Service, with over 20 years bringing divers the very best of the liveaboard experience. Call 1-800-DIV-XPRT and let C&C create an experience for you.
Boy, that place is really another world. And there's a lot more of the Red Sea to cover in an upcoming Sea Fans.
That's right, Lynn. Someday we'll return to take a look at diving from Israel and the Sudan. But right now, Scott Cortelyou brings us his news report on what's happening in the world of diving.
One feature he'll focus on is what's new from equipment manufacturers.
Hi, I'm Scott Cortelyou with Sea-Fan's Dive News, and the next face you'll see is probably the most recognizable in all of scuba diving. In fact, he's the reason most of us are able to dive. Jacques Cousteau was a unanimous choice at this year's Dive Equipment Convention to be the first inductee to the Scuba Hall of Fame.
It was a great satisfaction to see that in '88, finally, the front pages, the cover pictures of most of the magazines, the first page of all the newspapers were devoted to environmental problems. It was the first year that such an awareness was visible.
Cousteau spent his early years inventing scuba, then much of the 60s and 70s exploring planet ocean. Now he's dedicated his efforts to preserving the seas and is hopeful divers will join that effort. By the way, membership in the Cousteau Society is at 325,000 and growing. Cousteau was also honored this year at Ocean Expo 89 in Miami, receiving the Expo's Lifetime Achievement Award. Speaking of ocean preservation, the Marine Resources Development Foundation at Key Largo, Florida, has published a final report on last year's coral reef workshop. And that report says the most serious threat to reefs along the Florida Keys is from land-based sources. The more than 50 scientists who took part in the workshop said that although reefs have been damaged, the effects are reversible. Now the organization is looking for funding to develop educational programs about coral reef problems. Marine Resources is also working on a study of nitrogen bubbles. Volunteers who spent 48 hours at just 16 feet in an underwater habitat had nitrogen bubbles in their blood, despite the shallow depth, though none developed any symptoms of the bends. The study is incomplete. Only male test subjects have been used so far. More testing is planned using female divers. The bends is only one of the problems encountered in dive rescue training, but a group of divers in East Texas got a first-hand look at mock cases of the bends and other rescue scenarios last summer. Divers and instructors from throughout East Texas got together for a day-long drill. Just coordinating all the parties involved was a huge task.
He's unconscious. I'm gonna need help.
Okay. Backboard? Where's a backboard? Backboard up there somewhere.
About once every 3 seconds.
You don't got a pulse.
Right, since it's going to be really
Approach from the side.
The National YMCA Scuba Program sponsored the East Texas event as part of its Rescue Diver Training Program. There's no better place to find new gadgets for divers than the annual DEMA convention, and this year was no exception. Lots of new items on display at the Dive Equipment Manufacturers Association gathering in Las Vegas. Among them, this snorkel from U.S. divers called the Impulse. The idea is it drains itself of residual water that invades your snorkel on the surface. It sells for about $42. Then there's the Scuda for self-contained underwater drinking apparatus, a solution to the cottonmouth condition that some divers complain of. Scuda attaches to your regulator hose and provides an on-demand supply of liquid through your regulator. It sells for about $40. The maker says it's best not to use anything carbonated or alcoholic in your Scuda. If you find looking for and at your compass is a distraction, try this one. It's called Mask Nav and gives you a heads-up look at your compass when placed in the down position. Mask Nav sells for about $60. It's from the people who brought us the Iwa bag. Finally, there's the Splash, an alternate air source for dive emergencies, reminiscent of a device used by James Bond in the film Thunderball. It's not cheap, sells for about $450. You might check with your local dive shop for availability. By the way, if you're in the dive equipment business and have a new product, we'd like to show it to divers everywhere. Send us one and we'll take a look. There is a catch. Anything you send us becomes the property of CFans. Divers who subscribe to CompuServe, a computer network that includes a dive forum, may have noticed a recent message that was somewhat misleading. It said that Blue Cross Blue Shield was planning to terminate payment for hyperbaric chambers, no matter the reason, this fall. We contacted Blue Cross Blue Shield and found that isn't the case. The only benefits being terminated are those involving the use of hyperbaric chambers for cosmetic reasons. Seems that's a growing fad with the Hollywood set. If your policy with Blue Cross Blue Shield includes hyperbaric benefits, they will still be there this fall. However, there are more than 60 Blue Cross Blue Shield plans nationwide. It might pay to double-check yours. Here's another story that made the rounds of the dive community that turns out to be incorrect. Word that canned cheese, often used to feed fish, kills the fish because it's so concentrated they can't digest it. The story was attributed to sources in Bonaire and turns out not to be true. In fact, one marine expert says canned cheese is harmless. Now to Eyes Below, a chance for our viewers to show us some of their video stuff. John Ball of Kokomo, Indiana, captured an eagle ray gliding along the bottom, and an octopus, not as shy as some, working the reef at night. The next stop, Cozumel, where dive master Oscar Torres of Dive Paradise captured this footage of a moray having dinner boa constrictor style. Maryland's Dick Arnold had his video camera ready in the Baja when a sea lion made one of its playful charges. Some holiday footage came to us from the Sport Divers Club of Panama, who held a Christmas reunion on Mamie Island, and we should have seen this coming. They planted an underwater Christmas tree. Now a new feature in CFans Dive News, the Dive Log, a list of events coming up all around Planet Ocean we hope you'll be interested in. If you'd like to add one to the list, send us as much advance notice as possible. That's all for now. Keep us in mind as you explore Planet Ocean. I'm Scott Cortelyou for CFans.
Introducing an intelligent display of your behavior. Tecna's new Digitech, a fully computerized dive console. Digitech is changing the face of underwater instruments in a diver-friendly way. The Digitech from Tecna tracks 11 separate dive functions and automatically displays them in a logical, easy-to-read format. Imagine a pictograph of your scuba tank that actually shows your air supply at a glance, and a remaining airtime function that constantly updates how many minutes of air you have left. The Digitech includes a unique scrolling function that allows you to recall information from up to 4 previous dives, and best of all, Digitech lights up in the dark automatically. No more sweeping your console with a light to monitor depth, bottom time, or remaining air. Tecna's diver-friendly Digitech, your new diving companion with perfect recall. See Digitech at your dive dealer today.
Lynn, have you always wanted to be a diver?
I have. I watched Seahan, Jules Verne, all those old movies.
Didn't that make you think, though, that it was fraught with peril? You know, giant octopus attacking you or bad guys trying to cut your air hose?
It did, and I've never had any problems with anyone trying to cut my air hose. And I had more problems with an 8-legged spider who got into my regulator last time it was in storage than I ever have with octopus. In fact, most of the ones I've seen could fit into my hands.
I know what you mean. Spiders are a good reason to check your equipment before heading off on your first open water dive. But there really are giant octopus. This winter I went up to Puget Sound, where divers are studying the habits of these harmless creatures. Octopus doflani, the giant Pacific octopus, can reach lengths of 20 feet and weigh over 100 pounds. It's the largest species of octopus in the world, and arguably the most misrepresented animal in the sea. For centuries, mariners have spun yarns about huge denizens of the deep that have pulled many a poor ship and sailor to a watery grave. Many of these legends persist today, perhaps because much remains unknown about these creatures. Well, there's a group of divers in Washington State who are trying to change all that. The Puget Sound in the northwest United States is home to many giant octopus. I traveled to Tacoma, Washington to participate in a PADI research diver class, which is compiling information about these octopus. The Seafans crew is notorious for running into bad weather, and this trip is no exception. Undaunted by the first snow Tacoma has had in 3 years, we head to the Tacoma Narrows in nearby Titlow Beach, where today's water exercises are taking place. PADI instructor Rick Manning and marine biologist Michael Kite are teaching the octopus research course.
Your dive masters will sit you down behind the den, upslope of the den, so the octopus cannot see you. Okay, and you'll just sit in the bottom. You'll be within visual sight of me and the octopus's den opening. So
Michael's been retained by the state of Washington for years as a project biologist. His interest in octopus stems from years of diving with them.
I witnessed a fight between two large octopus back in January 1975. And this sparked my interest as a biologist, and so I started doing some literature research on it, interviewing other workers in octopus, and I found that the fight I witnessed was fairly unusual and was of great interest in behavior work and this sort of thing. And I started a tagging program pretty much on my own with a little bit of assistance from Washington Department of Fisheries in '76, and have continued since then.
All right, now what'll take place here is capture group number 1 will go out there and get situated, and then Mike will come down and extract the octopus, put it in the bag, and then you and your staff member will go cruising around on the bottom looking for more dens. This is the time for you to be using your lights and stuff.
The class had an extensive lecture last night, so after a short briefing, we break up into small groups, gear up, and head into the 45-degree water. Rick and Michael have earlier located some inhabited octopus dens where the class will observe captures. The dens here at Titlow Beach are located along rocky ledges at a depth of about 40 feet. Our group arrives at a den and we position ourselves behind the den so as not to frighten the octopus. An octopus normally crawls along the bottom when not fleeing danger, using its suckers for traction. Throwing leading arms forward and drawing their bodies up behind, a large octopus can travel several miles an hour and can easily outpace a diver. Michael bags this specimen and gives it to me for transportation to the beach. Mike advises not to handle octopus excessively unless you're going to take them as game. At another den, this inhabitant quickly changes color to blend in with the background. Octopus change color by expanding and contracting cells which contain pigments. This octopus doesn't want to play and jets away from Mike in a cloud of ink. Experts believe the ink can affect the olfactory senses of predators, and the shape of the cloud may act as a decoy. This is another large, sexually mature octopus.
And for the most part, they're large males. They will find a female that is also in the 40 to 50 pound range that will mate. And she will go off and find a den in which she can hide herself, barricade the entrance of the den, and lay up around an average of 50,000 eggs. And these eggs are laid on strings. They are incubated and guarded by the female for 6 months, at which time she stays in the den, does not eat. At the end of 6 months, the eggs hatch, and she dies from starvation because she does not eat, and she simply switches off her appetite. The male, after meeting with 3 to 4 females, will go off and do the same thing. He will die from lack of eating also. The young octopus, after they hatch out of the eggs, will swim about in the water column for 6 to 8 weeks, depending on temperature and food supply, and then settle out of the water column into the bottom environment and become small octopus. At this time, they are growing at 1 to 2% body weight per day, which is quite rapidly. They will reach about 2 to 4 pounds in the first year, about 10 plus pounds in the second year, and in their third year will be reproductively mature again. And the cycle starts over again there.
Back at the beach, the class reassembles for data collection. The first information taken is weight.
Read it.
46.
Oh, really? Okay.
46?
46, right down 43.
The octopus is then placed in a plastic tub for measurement. The distance between eyes and the mantle length are the measurements taken.
14 eye. Little calm guy, this one is. 30 DML.
The sex of the octopus is then determined, and any distinguishing scars or marks are noted.
Right there. Does not have suckers at the tip, and it has a strong groove for passing the sperm package to the female.
A plastic tag offering a reward is inserted into one of the octopus's arms. This tag, if returned, will provide valuable information about the migratory habits.
You want to see the beak?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if we can see a beak in this one. The other ones haven't been too cooperative. This one's not too cooperative either. There's a beak right there. You see a dark place right there? Okay, that's where his beak is, right by my thumb.
Lynn Polensky, a biologist with the Washington Department of Fisheries, who's observing the class, explains the importance of this kind of research.
We are able to gather information from our research to issue regulations, implement regulations, in determining the manner in which these species are to be harvested, the best way to do it, the way to do it that will least endanger the animal itself, and also the size and amount that should be taken. We do a lot of population density studies.
Well, we had to work pretty hard for our 6 octopus, and we found, I think, 2 more that we couldn't locate after we found them, or else couldn't get out. Okay, so I'm giving Terry credit there for one that I couldn't find after she found it. But anyway, so we caught 6 total. Out of that 6, we had 1 female, and the rest were large, reproductively mature males, as was the female for that matter. She was mature also. Our average weight was right on about 42, 43 pounds, which is a mature weight for an octopus, as you remember from the Thursday night lecture.
Later, I get to release one of these magnificent creatures. It seems rather reluctant to let go. I come away with a new appreciation for these so-called monsters of the deep.
That was a fascinating story. Were they really as big as they looked?
They were very large, but they're also kind of warm and cuddly.
You're going to get a lot of comments about that story, John.
Well, I hope we do. We love getting comments from viewers, and one thing that you keep asking is that we continue to cover dive destinations that are close to the United States.
Our next destination fits that bill. It's Nassau in the Bahamas. It's been called the underwater Hollywood because so many movies have been filmed there. But it also features British ambience, sharks, and a lot more.
The world can you find marching bands, marching flamingos, and even marching fish? Why, Nassau, of course. Nassau is close and easy to get to from anywhere on the East Coast. That's why it's a perfect place for a weekend dive getaway. Nassau isn't very large, only 21 miles by 7 miles. While everybody calls it Nassau, the island is really named New Providence. The best diving is located on the western side of the island. In fact, this part of Nassau is dubbed the Underwater Hollywood. Its convenience to the U.S. and clear, warm waters make it the perfect setting for underwater photography. James Bond prowled these wrecks in Thunderball and Never Say Never Again. Ron Howard's crews filmed the underwater scenes in Splash and Cocoon here. To dive the underwater movie sites, we choose the man who has given support and assistance to Hollywood filmmakers. Our guide is Stuart Cove, native-born owner and manager of Nassau Undersea Adventures. It's located on star-studded Lyford Key, where celebrities like Sean Connery, Diana Ross, the Rockefellers, and Sidney Poitier have gorgeous winter homes. And when the stars go diving, they dive with Stuart.
Or Nassau Undersea Adventures is called upon by all the dive companies who come to Nassau to make films. And they use us for the training of the stars and the safety diving for the stars. We have worked with Brooke Shields, have certified Brooke Shields for Wet Gold. For Splash, we worked with Daryl Hannah, Tom Hanks, and Ron Howard. We did, of course, Sean Connery during Never Say Never Again. Priscilla Presley, Michael Landon. We do a lot of work with these people, and also we do some of the stunt work on the movie sets. A lot of people seem to think that these stars are real biggity and can be hard to work with, but they have been very pleasant to meet.
Today, we're heading for a wreck that was sunk as a Hollywood underwater movie prop, the Tears of Allah. This 100-foot freighter has a checkered past. leading to its confiscation for drug running back in 1981. It was then purchased by Hollywood movie producers. Stewart's operation sank the ship for the movie Never Say Never Again. Inside, thousands of silversides swirl in a funnel of synchronized movement. These fish have literally taken over the ship. We find them in every area we explore. This blue tang sees us coming and quickly disappears down a secret passage. Leaving the wreck, we head out across a hilly white sand bottom, where approximately 40 feet away, a dark form rises up. This jumbled maze of connecting pipes is the remains of another old movie prop used in the movie Thunderball. It must have taken a lot of Hollywood magic to transform this jungle gym into a British Vulcan bomber. Today, it is a living, growing network of protection for corals, sponges, small arrow crabs, and all kinds of fish. In a small coral head near the wreck, we find the home of a bulbous anemone. I've heard of feeding table scraps to a neighborhood stray, but feeding an anemone? It's really kind of fun if you can keep the other moochers away. Here it gladly accepts a small sliver of ballyhoo. This delicate basket starfish is very friendly. In fact, a little too friendly. Here it's wrapped its fragile arm so tightly around my finger that it's difficult to free myself. There are basically 3 different ways to experience Nassau. If you're into glitzy resorts with casinos and beach fun, try Paradise Island. Just across the bridge from downtown Nassau. The hotels here are plush, but you face a half-hour to 45-minute ride by car or boat to get to the dive sites around the West End. Still luxurious, but much closer to the best diving, is the DV Bahamas Beach Resort and Country Club. DV Bahamas has attractive tropical rooms with private patios or balconies. There's a medley of restaurants and a fun poolside bar. If you like sports, check out the 18-hole Championship PGA golf course, or challenge the Club Pro on the tennis courts. We want to catch the real flavor of Nassau, so we start out at a family-run European inn for a homey, relaxed atmosphere. The Orange Hill Beach Inn derives its name from an orange orchard planted by the original English owners in the early 1920s. Today, the inn is a combination of both old and new buildings. Here we find reasonable room rates and personal down-home attention.
Kind of a chicken kind of a guy.
Be sure to rest up before taking a dive vacation to Nassau, because after a full day of diving, there's still a full evening of fun ahead. If you're into fresh banana daiquiris, then you must stop at Travelers. We do. This laid-back local hangout is a great place to just sit outside, to meet people, and to play a friendly board game similar to tic-tac-toe. As darkness falls, we head for Goombay, a weekly summer festival. Back at the Orange Hill Beach Inn, we find a group of divers reliving today's dive adventure. And these guys are still pumped up.
We're intruders. We're intruders. These sharks, they know. They know. We're just visiting, you know? Oh, good hit. There you go. Hey, he broke my stick.
Where did they get these amazing shots? From one of Stewart's special sites. In fact, it's where we're heading tomorrow.
Will we all have a stick?
Yeah, everybody would have a stick about, like this. Try not to, as the sharks come in towards you, try not to actually jab the sharks with the stick, but more just kind of just defend them off in case they do come in a little bit closer than you'd like.
Shark buoy is great. It's a buoy that's anchored out in the middle of the tongue of the ocean at the entrance, and it's anchored by the U.S. Navy, who has a submarine base in Andros. And this buoy is for tying up the sonar ship in, which, of course, guides the submarines into the base, into the tongue of the ocean. And we go and anchor or tie to this buoy with the dive boat and chum up the sharks, and, of course, swim with the sharks. And we stay quite shallow. We put a drop line off the stern of the boat, and we'll feed them and take pictures and video. But we found that these sharks are very docile, very kind to be with. They're not interested in biting us at all. We feed them.
So you haven't lost anybody yet?
No, we haven't lost anybody. We only take advanced divers down, and we're very confident under the water. I wouldn't want to take a beginner down there because at times you will have 20 or 30 sharks all around you. The buoy has created its own ecosystem with moss over it, and obviously lots of little shrimp. And there's hundreds and hundreds of fish, from mackerel to jacks. And I've seen sharks actually eat the jacks, so shooting after them and eat a jack or mackerel.
We're diving in 6,000 feet of water with no bottom in sight. I'm so busy keeping my eyes on the sharks that I find myself sinking without even realizing it. Sharing a shark's underwater environment is a humbling experience, to say the least. After overcoming my initial jitters, I respectfully observe these beautifully streamlined creatures. There's still daylight left after diving, so we head into Nassau. Our Dastra Gardens is home to the world-famous Marching Pink Flamingo Show. Lexian, the animal caretaker, introduces me to Princess, a tame cockatoo.
Huh? He's showing off.
Downtown at the colorful straw market, I find the perfect souvenir.
I'll take this hat. How much?
The next day, we move over to the DV Bahamas Beach Resort and hook up with Peter Hughes Dive South Ocean. This brand new operation is located on a private channel with a small marina. It features 40-foot dive boats which hold up to 20 divers. We're heading out to Tunnel Wall. It's not quite as thrilling as the shark dive, but it's equally impressive. Tunnel Wall is a honeycombed spiral of intricate tunnels and caverns. These mazes start shallow, but can drop down to thousands of feet in depth. Our next dive site is spectacular Golden Key. I have to choose this dive site as one of my favorite shallow water dives. On this warm, bright day, the sun's rays dance and flicker through the water. Quite frankly, we're pleasantly surprised with Nassau. We never thought it would be this good. It's close to the United States. There's lots to see and do here. The island offers a distinctive British ambiance, and the diving offers something for everyone. To borrow the tourist board's phrase, it is better in the Bahamas.
Is your CFAN's video library complete? It's not if you haven't collected the wealth of coverage of Planet Ocean available in CFAN's back issues. These timeless tapes will continue to provide valuable dive information and underwater entertainment for years to come. The Collector's Edition Premier Issue takes you up close and personal with agile sea lions in Mexico's Sea of Cortez. You'll meet Chris Newbert, photographer and author of Within a Rainbowed Sea, who shares some hints for dramatic macro studies. The artist's palette of diving in Bonaire splashes with color before your eyes. The premiere issue couples all this with 24 hours in an underwater habitat and a look at how underwater lava tubes are formed amidst the splendor of the Garden Isle, Kauai. Volume 1, Number 2 takes you to magnificent Micronesia to explore the rock islands and the coral gardens of the island of Palau. You can relive World War II history in the underwater museum that is Truck Lagoon, the Super Bowl of wreck diving. We take you seaplane diving, and Howard Hall demonstrates his techniques for capturing stunning wide-angle photos. Finally, you'll delight in the laid-back atmosphere, clear water, and heart-stopping walls of Little Cayman Island. Speaking of clear water, In the award-winning Volume 1, Number 3, you get to experience the air-clear water of Florida's freshwater caverns. And you meet some special Florida residents, the endangered manatees. For a taste of liveaboard diving, we take you to the Tropic Bird in the British Virgin Islands, site of the famous Wreck of the Rhone. Then it's on to the Barrier Reef of Belize, where you can encounter dolphins and visit Mayan ruins all on the same trip. From Mayans to Micronesians, we then dive into the magical kingdom of Ponape in the Western Pacific. We review an assortment of dive lights, and photographer Stephen Frink shows you how to light divers for maximum photo appeal. Finally, we acquaint you with some heavenly reef dwellers, the angelfish. In Volume 1, Number 4, it's action-packed drift diving from Cozumel, Mexico's premier dive spot. Then we give you some highs and lows, a dive trek to an 11,000-foot Colorado mountain lake, and a plunge 800 feet down Cayman's Wall in a submersible. Jimmy Ibbotson sings for us. Carl Rossler reveals his strategies for capturing award-winning marine life portraits, and we take you into a shark suit and cage for a thrilling encounter with blue sharks off the coast of San Diego. It's enough to take your breath away, but we want you to keep breathing, and we show you how with a review of a vital safety device, the alternate air source. Then we travel to where the water is crowded with fish, but they're just a handful of divers. Andros Island in the Bahamas. Volume 2, Number 1 is a treasure that includes the grandeur of California's unrivaled kelp forests. Then there's the underground treasure of the freshwater caverns called cenotes in Akumal, Mexico. An American treasure is Palm Beach on Florida's Gold Coast. However, for rich surroundings and rich diving, there's probably no rival to Grand Cayman Island, a diver's treasure trove. Finally, we add to the vault a look at the riches underwater in Guanaja, Honduras, where the greatest variety of Caribbean coral species thrive, and an equipment review of an invaluable device, the depth gauge. Marvelous Maui is the feature destination in Volume 2, Number 2, where you'll be able to glide with manta rays and watch the whales. We profile a champion liveaboard, the Cayman Aggressor, and we sharpen your knowledge of dive knives. Then it's more American diving on the island you can drive to, Key Largo, Florida. And there's more. Cavern photographer Wes Skiles illuminates us on the use of multiple light sources. We discover the exotic culture that's still alive on the Micronesian island of Yap, where divers are just beginning to explore the fantasy world that surrounds the island underwater. But there's also a lot of discovering to do in the Caribbean. And we unveil the island of Saba, known as the Unspoiled Queen. A medal winner at the 31st International Film and Television Festival of New York, Volume 2, Number 3 features Puerto Rico, where you'll find old world charm and diving variety. We give you a feel for group travel on a dive store trip to Roatan, Honduras. Closer to home, it's California's Monterey Peninsula, a uniquely rich marine environment. A liveaboard cruise on the dive yacht Coral Star, a demonstration of underwater modeling techniques by Patty Mount, and a marine life close-up of barracudas round out the issue. Volume 2, Number 4, an all-request issue, takes you to the fish-laden waters of St. Vincent in the Eastern Caribbean, to the wreck-laden freshwater of Michigan's Great Lakes, to the warm Pacific water of Guam and the Northern Marianas, Micronesia's Sunbelt, and to the array of liveaboard boats that ply the waters of Belize's Barrier Reef. With a new feature, Dive News, and a thorough review by our own Scott Ogle of the equipment available for making your own underwater videos, it's the capstone to 2 years of Sea Fans. Each and every issue is designed to keep you in touch with Planet Ocean, and they're all available at your favorite dive store or by calling us at 1-800-622-8767. Remember also that if you're one of the many divers who is excited about sailing, you're probably ready to set sail with our new video magazine for sailors. Set Sail brings to the world of sailing the same kind of quality, information, and entertainment that divers have found in Sea Fans. It's the perfect way to keep you or a friend sailing all year long. Use the enclosed card or call 1-800-622-8767 to subscribe.
For all of us at Sea Fans, thank you for joining us. Reporting from the pool, I'm Lynn Eisaguirre, and I'm ready to go diving.
And I'm John Evans. We'll see you next issue when we come back up for air with stories from Truck Lagoon to Cayman Brac and lots of others.